Good morning. The sun just came up, and annoyingly, because otherwise I would have been able to do like a video in the dark. You see all these guys on the internet being all like 996, and you know, up at 5 a.m. ice bath at 5:30 a.m. Blah, blah, blah. I wake up early, bring my kids to sports, and then I jog. I was never a morning person, and now I am. But the reason they do that, and the kind of thing that I think they're saying, is if you are a founder of a startup, you're doing uncomfortable things. It's really difficult, and you don't know that. The sort of life cycle of a startup is, which I've seen many times, is you start it and it seems really fun, and you're like, all right, this is kind of great and it's easy, and then you have like a trough afterwards where you think, God, the early wins now have to translate into ongoing execution, and that's annoying because your devs are complaining, your sales guys are complaining. Sales guys go up and down. They're sort of super happy when they're selling and really unhappy when they're not selling. Your designers are prima donnas, and so it just gets difficult. You know, customers start to complain. You know, the integrations you're doing are way more difficult than you think, and it all just becomes hard, right? And then you have to sack somebody, and that's really difficult. You're working really too late, and your partner starts to get upset with you, and you're not doing any sleep, you're losing exercise. So the whole thing can become really hard, like it'll become really difficult. And so I think these dudes who are waking up at 5 a.m. are in some ways kind of douchey, right? But what they're doing is a hard thing. They're doing something they don't want to do. And a startup is a hard thing. You know, Elon says it's like eating glass and staring into the void. And what he means is it's difficult, and it's not for everyone. If you're thinking of quitting your job and doing a startup so that you can have more work-life balance, you won't, you'll have less. But in fact, the work-life balance argument sort of doesn't make sense anymore, because your life becomes your startup and you don't care about work-life balance. Work-life balance is a phrase that happens because people don't want to do work. They don't like work, because corporate work can be annoying and no one really wants to do it. They're doing it for the money. In startup world, you're not doing it for the money because there's no money. There is really nice money in the end if it works, but if it doesn't, which most of the time it doesn't, there isn't money. So the equation is, you know, you're working harder for less money, but you're happier. So there is a happiness in it, but it's also a happiness that comes with working super hard. And sometimes I think that there's a good place to look for founders in, you know, these sports guys who can really push themselves, because they know what it means to do hard things so that they can, you know, win later. So what I would say is, if you're not willing to wake up sort of just as the sun's coming up, because you want to stay in bed, then don't start a startup, right? You need to be able to do hard things. You need to be able to carry on being uncomfortable and push through it. I've seen quite a few people, you know, and then what'll happen is you'll run out of money, right? So you won't be able to pay your rent. You won't be able to go to dinners. You won't be able to do all the things that you used to do with money. That sucks. And there's a time limit on that. That's kind of why it's difficult for older founders, right? If you're running out of money and have to pay a mortgage, you're kind of fucked. You know, when I was running out of money at Tiger Spike, we made no money for 2 years. But I lived in Sydney, and I just went to the beach. You know, there were things you could do for no money. Plus, I was young, I had a rich girlfriend for a while, and then we broke up because, you know, boyfriends and girlfriends usually have a hard time, you know, staying together when you're running a startup. So, unfortunately, I think you need to have the mentality. You need to have that mentality that you can do difficult things over and over again for a long time, feeling really shit and uncomfortable. In Silicon Valley at the moment, there's a bit of a trend where they're looking for trauma in founders. They're saying, oh, you know, I want to have somebody who had childhood trauma. And the reason they're saying that is because those people have pushed through and have sort of done hard things. I actually don't think you need to have childhood trauma. I never had any. But what they're saying is it's difficult, right? You've got to overcome it. And more people than you think stop. And so I would just reiterate, if you are not able to wake up super early in the morning and have a hard time doing difficult things, if you have a hard time being rejected, if you have a hard time sacking someone whose mum is sick, or all of these things, then it's difficult, right? It's difficult to be a founder. So unfortunately, you've got to be pretty tough. And hopefully you are. If you are, then quit your corporate job and do it. Good luck.